Welcome to yet another episode of the SA Music Box with me, the Eskimo Writer. Our guest in studio, much awaited guest, is RJ Benjamin, who's an award-winning artist, songwriter, producer, and composer. RJ has 5 albums under his belt, and music direction is one of his skills as well. He worked with me on Clash of the Choirs some years back, also on The Voice and Idols, and it's our absolute pleasure to have him here in the SA Music Box studio. RJ, welcome to SA Music Box, finally.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
So I know you watched the show, and when I asked you to come on, you were obviously very keen. I mean, before you said yes, you almost sent me your 3 songs already.
You know what the thing is, that I suppose when you watch, you're always going, well, what would I choose, you know? And so I think in the back of my head, I'm like, okay, just think of 3 songs, you know, so that one day maybe he's going to, you know, give you the call. And you did. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
I was ready, man.
Well, you're a man with vast experience, and I think for our audience out there, this is going to be an absolute treat for them because they get to dive into your mind through the show a little bit and just talk about what shaped you. Now, I know this about you. You were big into vinyl. You listened to a lot of vinyl as a young person.
Yeah.
Your dad's collection of vinyl, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. I mean, my dad wasn't a musician per se. He played a bit of piano. He was a good singer. Had way more rhythm than me, but he loved music. I know we all love music, but like my mom and I were talking about it the other day. My dad passed on about 17 years ago,
right?
And she was just saying she's never met anybody who loved music like he did. He was obsessed, and it obviously it trickled down to me, you know. But he had this you know, vinyl collection that he was very proud of, full of soul music, tons of soul music. That's what he loved, and so obviously I suppose as a curious kid, that's why I love vinyls though, you know, because there's this big thing, and then you know you might be too young and you shouldn't be touching it, but obviously you're going to take those vinyls because you want to hear what's on there, and then the little scratches and pops, and then suddenly there's this beautiful music.
Now I get it. We're of a similar generation, and it's exactly the way I actually learned music.
Right.
My dad had lots of records, and the first thing I can remember listening to and playing was the Beatles.
Right.
And I learned all these songs. I think I was 6 or 7, and I knew most of the Beatles catalog already. And you probably did the same.
Yeah.
And you're saying your dad had soul because, I mean, you ultimately, I mean, if I had to say, no one wants to be classified, but you have a lot of soul in the music that you've made so far.
Yeah, I mean, I can't deny it. He's probably the biggest influence. Like, there are obvious musical influences, and many that you know of mine, but my dad was my biggest musical influence, hands down.
I find that quite interesting because that's how you learn music. But in your own journey now as a teacher of music, you've been a musical guide to many artists that I know, and many students who have been tutored by you or been taught by you. Who were the students that you had a strong gut feel for over the years?
Look, I think the biggest one, I'll break it up into 2 because the one possibly hasn't succeeded beyond his success on Idols.
Yeah.
And that's Vincent Bones. I'm still, you know, I know
that's a cool name.
It's a great name.
Yeah, Vincent Bones.
I mean, just in case people don't remember who he is, he won Idols, I think, in 2014.
Yeah.
Little guy with an incredibly powerful big voice. And he was one of my students at the NSA in about 2003.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget walking into the National School of the Arts at like 7:15 in the morning, and I'm not a morning person. And this guy, he got there. He was always at the door. I unlocked the door. He was the first to come in. He'd go straight to the piano and just start blasting away vocally. And I always used to go, "You're singing too loud in the morning. Why aren't you warming up?" You know. And then I'd obviously give him the whole thing. He's the only person I ever remember like doing that. Like he was so. He loved singing so much. It's like literally the second he woke up, he was blasting away. And so when I did eventually reconnect with him on Idols, in my head I was like, I'm so glad because I always thought this guy had potential, and then he landed up winning. Okay, maybe I'll actually mention 2 because I partially taught and studied with Elvis Bloom.
Right.
And a bit of the same feeling. Man, I was so because I know he had started his career, it didn't quite work out the way he wanted it to, and I think for him he felt, let me give it one more shot, and there's that audition he did, which
I remember that,
iconic, where I think he sang "To Make You Feel My Love" by Bob Dylan, and man, I can't remember if I shed a tear, but I was so proud, man. The other person would probably be Amanda Black, who I met on Idols.
Yeah.
And we spent many hours just sitting in the room where we were supposed to be working on songs for Idols, while she would play her songs on piano and guitar. I just remember sitting there quietly listening, giving them whatever little tidbits I could give her. Like, this girl's going far. Whether she wins the show or not, this girl's going far. And she's had some problems in the industry already, but she's got this new album out, and nothing's going to stop her. You know, you cannot stop undeniable talent like that.
The cream will rise to the top.
And with her, that is absolutely the case.
Yeah. So that's interesting, because you've obviously worked with a lot of people, and some of them who, are famous now too.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting choice that you chose those singers. Elvis Blue obviously made it through Idols and became recognized, but he was doing a lot of work before that.
A lot.
And Vincent Bones, who you mentioned, did you find that he had developed substantially between 2003 and when you met him again?
Not as much as I would have liked, to be honest. Look, that said, he was just always immensely talented. Yeah. So sometimes what happens with people who are just born with so much already, you've kind of reached the ceiling to some degree, and you rely on that for the rest of your life. Look, I think to a degree he's done that, and he did that. That doesn't change the fact that he's still an extremely talented kid. I know that he's singing at a church that one of my colleagues, Marley Kelly, very, very great vocal coach, he sings there, and I do know that he's trying to get back into the industry. You know, the thing is, the one skill that a show like Idols doesn't necessarily teach you is how to connect with a crowd. And it's the one thing he was missing. I remember going to watch a performance of his after he had won Idols.
I think they should get comedians to come in and teach them that part.
It's not a bad idea. It's actually not a bad idea.
Think about it, right?
Absolutely, man.
Primary job of a comedian, and it's the most.
Yeah. And you're alone on stage.
Yeah, that's it.
It's not like you have a band. I always feel like I'm safe with my band.
Yeah.
It's like, goddamn, comedians are alone.
I think, it takes different. You need to be tuned differently. And I think the great performers in the world, my personal opinion, is that they were tuned differently. They had that performance aspect, which comes from a different part that music comes from. And when those two things come together.
Yeah. I was never a natural performer. I was never, ever. It took me a long time.
Were you innately shy?
I was shy. I didn't get nervous on stage, but I was always quite self-conscious about the way I moved.
Yeah.
Because as much as I sang like not a white boy.
Yeah. You think you danced like a white boy?
I did. You can ask my wife. But I had to find what worked for me.
Yeah.
And what I eventually realized, putting on like a character or trying to be Mr. Cool on stage just never worked for me. Yeah. And eventually when I was just the guy that I am right now, or when I'm sitting in my lounge watching whatever I'm watching on TV, that once I did that, I realized that like the audience was like, hey, this guy's cool. It's literally like he's talking to me as though we're sitting next to each other watching football, you know, and that connection sold it for me for the rest of my career in terms of being a performer. Took a long time though.
Now, obviously, you're on the show tonight to select your 3 favorite SA songs. Now, people always say it's a really difficult thing, and it is a difficult choice to make.
Yeah.
So you need to give it a lot of thought, and someone like you has listened to a lot of music and takes such pride in selecting their music. I saw that on your website also. You listed your favorite albums of all time.
Yeah.
And you took a lot of effort and energy to actually describe why and when. So I was very curious about that. So your first song for SA Music Box is by Beatenberg and DJ Clock, a track called Pluto.
Yes.
So why is that on your list?
So many reasons. First off, their debut album. It's actually their second album, but I suppose for me it's the debut. Hanging Gardens is just a work of genius, I think. There are so many fascinating influences on that album, and textures and sounds.
Yeah. Also very original, right?
Very original. And I mean, I wouldn't have been exposed to that album if it wasn't for Pluto.
Right.
And the way Pluto came together is interesting because it was a song that was initially on the album. They were, as far as I understand, signed to Universal. And Linda Lanium Keys at Universal just felt that they didn't quite have like that major breakthrough hit yet. Not that, like the one that was really just going to put them on the map. And he came up with the idea of letting DJ Clock rework the beat of one of the songs called Pluto.
Right.
And of course Clock did that. He added that uniquely local house music flavor. And suddenly that song was everywhere. It was everywhere.
Right. Do you feel that Clock improved the timing signature?
Not necessarily. I actually
waited for 2 weeks to tell you that.
Look, DJ Clock and like so many South African producers, that they just have such a fascinating understanding of groove and rhythm.
It's a feel, isn't it?
It is absolutely.
And that's innate.
And as much as these music programs have, you hit the little block there and then it makes a, and whatever. These guys do it like nobody else in the world. And he did that. He added something special to it for sure. If you listen to the original, the drum groove is great, but it's quite a cliche groove to some degree.
And this made it stand out a little bit more.
This made it stand out. I will say this, and I hear so many singers getting this wrong all the time. The vocal rhythms of that song are fascinating and way more complicated than they sound. Funny enough, Vincent Bones sang the song on Idols in 2014.
Oh wow, okay.
He could not get the rhythm of the verses of the song. It's weird. It's sung between the sort of up and down beat. So a lot of singers don't quite know where to place it.
So if you write the song, it's easier because you've written it and you feel your tempo into it. Where somebody trying to mimic it,
it's hard for them because you're like, it's a house song, so you're assuming everything's on the I stand on the moon, but it's not as usually someone would go 1, 2, 3, 4. I stand on the moon. They didn't do that. They went 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. I stand on the moon. So it's just fascinating where they place things, and I was watching something on TV the other day where a band was covering the song and completely got that.
Messed it up.
The timing wrong, so it's quite fascinating. Matthew, who's the front man, he's quite a genius in my opinion.
I think so. And there's a few people who have chosen Beatenberg tracks on SA Music Box, and I think there's a reason behind that. There's an innate talent in the way they do go about things.
Absolutely.
You've heard it from RJ. He's got me excited, and I'm sure he's got you excited about this next track. It's Beatenberg and DJ Clock with a track called Pluto.
I still remember, I still remember you. I still remember you. I still remember.
Welcome back to the SA Music Box. My guest in studio is the RJ Benjamin. RJ, great choice of song, your first song to get everyone warmed up.
Thank you.
Now, you've released 5 albums. Which one is your favorite?
My second album. It's called. It's a long title. Swimming in the Soul of Music.
Right.
It's my favorite album. It's.
They always say the second one's the difficult one, right? So.
They do. I didn't have that. I didn't have that problem. I think the reason why. For any listeners that want to go delve. If you listen to my first album, it's called Who I Am. Look, it's an incredible album. It was probably the first neo soul album in South Africa. In terms of
the first one I remember for sure.
It's between me and MXO, and we released almost exactly at the same time, almost exactly on the same day. So that debate rages on. The one thing I had by the time I did my second album was a little bit more creative control. I also realized that if I score everything out, then I claim more publishing. So I went crazy. I literally scored that album like.
So you indulged in arrangement, composition, all of that. Huh?
Deeply. I didn't sleep. I had sleepless nights, and at that stage, I still obviously keep it all. But I've got all the.
I can imagine this going down for the listeners who obviously don't know you like I do. you're quite pedantic in terms of the way you do things, or like almost a perfectionist to some degree. I know you like to get things right.
Yeah,
So you must have really got into a lot of detail. Must have taken a great amount of energy.
I did. I think I reveled in the creativeness of that album in
Bit of
particular.
George Michael in that.
Yeah.
That's what George did with Older,
Yeah.
which was for me his best body of work he's ever done. He wrote,
I
produced,
adore that
arranged it. It was amazing, you know.
Yeah, I mean, look, it also appeals to me to see an artist where it's like written, produced, and arranged by Prince, written, and produced, and arranged by George Michael.
Yeah.
You know, all those elements. So I do like that. Look, I'm a bit of a control freak. One thing I did learn from the first album is that perfection is never going to happen. So actually, I kind of let that go. And what I mean by that is, I wanted my vocal to be absolutely perfect. I would go in and re-record lines like almost every single day when I recorded my first album.
Right.
And
Wanting it to be perfect,
absolutely
obviously.
perfect. And at the time, I was like, okay, now it's perfect because I fixed like the two in between whatever, you know what I'm saying, like one little word or syllable.
But let me guess, since then you listen to it and you go,
It's not quite.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
And I mean, auto-tune wasn't the thing it is nowadays.
Yeah.
So you can't you have to go and you have to re-record it. You can do drop-ins. You don't have to do an entire line. But the funny thing is when I started to listen back to it, by the time I released my second album, it was about 3-4 years later. So, 2 years after I'd recorded it, I suddenly started listening and going, it doesn't actually sound perfect. I was like, why did I spend so much time trying to make this sound perfect? Now it sounds okay.
Yeah.
But I'm picking up other mistakes, and I think that's the problem. We're human beings, so the voice and also how we hear music changes, and therefore, when you do listen back to your creativity, it kind of morphs into you're listening from your reference point now. Back then, I thought it was perfect, but now that my ear has changed, I've grown, I've matured. It's different. So I try to let that go in the second album, and just be a little bit more fluid, and rather just be like, it felt good. It felt good. I'm letting it go.
Yeah.
Even if it wasn't exactly pitched 100% perfectly, it felt good, and I think that's why I love that second album.
It's also a lesson that you learn. I mean, if you've listened to a lot of music, it influences the way you want to record and the way you want to sound. You have
That's
an
true.
idea in your head.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that when I was growing up, most of my favorite singers were not people who sounded perfect. I mean, John Lennon was one of them.
Yeah.
And he was very far from a perfect singer.
Yeah.
But it was all about energy, feel, and there was a
Yes.
primalness to his voice.
Yeah.
I thought, okay, yeah, they sort of did a take or two, and they said, right, that's it.
Yeah.
You know, so there were all these little blemishes if you really listen to those recordings.
Yeah.
And it made it magic.
I agree.
I thought, okay, but if I was listening to somebody else, I would have strived for, okay, I got to get that note right. I got to get. It's only through your own experience that you realize that it's not worth the chase.
Sometimes it isn't. No.
Yeah.
I mean, and the biggest song I ever had, which is a track I featured on called "Change the World."
Yeah,
That's probably the worst vocal I've ever recorded in my life.
and became the biggest hit.
Yeah. So,
So it happens, eh?
yeah.
Now, on the subject of vocals and vocalists, there are many young people who listen to the show who have aspirations of becoming singers,
Yeah.
particularly. What would you say to them? I mean, like you would say to a young Idols auditionee, if that's the word, how to go about training your voice from a young age?
You know, I as a vocal trainer, I don't think you should go through too many technical exercises and pushing too far, too young.
Yeah.
You know, you kind of, I think initially want to let the voice develop naturally. And I think certainly between up to maybe 12, 13, specifically for boys, maybe 16 for girls,
Yeah.
it's really just playing. It's exploring. The
Just
same
singing.
way,
Just singing all the time.
right. The same way you're playing with your friends, the same way you're playing with toys, the same way you're
Yeah.
playing games. You should be playful with music in that respect. And that goes with singing, exploring the different parts of your range, what you're capable of doing, what your voice does. That doesn't mean you can't play by recording some songs.
Yeah.
Writing is also playing, creating, you know what I'm saying? You make up a song. That's
So
fun.
just being in music and
Yes.
musicality and that everything that's related to
Yeah,
it.
because I think so many artists, as they mature, they almost lose that playfulness.
Yeah.
I started making music because I used to play with my toys and then make up my own characters.
Yeah.
And those
I
characters,
did the same thing.
right?
What toys did you have?
Well, my era was He-Man.
I had a He-Man as well.
Okay.
In fact,
Yeah.
I'll be honest. I had a Skeletor. I prefer the villain.
Okay. Oh man, I mean, yeah, no, I was obsessed with He-Man. I really
Yeah.
was. So,
Did you ever grow your hair
I
in a
probably,
little He-Man
Oh.
bowl cut?
yeah, when I was way older, which is kind of embarrassing. So, and somewhere on Facebook. Uh,
But yeah, but I get what you're saying there, because what you did is embellish fantasy, and you started dreaming up character
yeah.
and impressions and all of that.
Yes. I mean, and creativity doesn't change.
Yeah.
That's how you should be creating even when you're older. I don't know. Sometimes getting older and adulting, I suppose, stifles a lot of that, but you have to tap into that. We all did it as kids.
Yeah,
And I often call that music creativity your musical imagination. And those were the best. Those times of your life are there's so much going on. There's so many sparks.
Yeah.
You almost have to tap into that again to find that raw inspiration.
Yeah.
that true inspiration.
because I think that's what really roots itself in your subconscious, which is actually the true root of your creativity, not your conscious, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't have said it better.
Thank you, RJ. Well, folks, you've heard it from who I would call the one of the leading authorities, definitely in music on this continent when it comes to composing, producing, and songwriting. In terms of, if you have a young kid out there who wants to get into music, let them enjoy it, right?
Absolutely.
That's
It's
step
as simple
one.
as that, man.
Now, on the subject of enjoyment, as a young man, I was exposed to a band in South Africa, and it changed my entire view and how I looked at South African music.
Yeah.
It was just the most exciting thing for
Yeah.
me to hear this band, and they still are my favorite SA band of all time. The band is Just Ginger, and a track called "What It Means" is your second choice on SA Music Box.
Yeah. So I mean, I'll be brief on this, but I grew up in Edenvale,
Yeah,
and they used to come perform at the Edenvale Sports Club. And
you grew up in Edenvale.
I
You know, we
grew
had
up
Miguel Preguero on the show last
Yeah.
week, and he's from Edenvale too.
He's a Vela. I
Yeah,
didn't
yeah,
know
yeah.
that. Okay, that's cool.
2 Edenvalers in a row. That must be a record.
Nice, man. We hail from the Vale, as
Yeah,
we used to
that's
say.
it.
And we used to go watch Just Ginger at the sports club religiously. If they were there, we were there. And this would have been in my mid-90s, somewhere around
Yeah,
there. And they were, I tell you what, they made me feel like I was watching the Beatles in Liverpool. What's that place called?
Oh, the Tavern.
Yeah, the Tavern, exactly.
Tavern.
That felt like our tavern, and it felt like we were watching something special. It really did. So I'm 100% on board with you about them being my favorite band.
Yeah.
I'm with you there, and that doesn't change to this very day. They were absolute legends. I just remember just watching all the elements. I forget the bass guitarist's name. He was so amazing. But Vernie Skoltz was playing guitar, and he used to slay some guitar solos. He was amazing.
The bass guitarist in those days was it Tabs or
It was Tabs.
Tabs? Yeah,
You got a good memory, man.
yeah. Thank you.
Look, they were just a superstar band, and then they did this. I mean, I don't know if everyone's seen them live, but I'll tell you what, it was an experience. They had this little section where they all do like a percussion solo,
Yeah, I remember that was great. Yeah,
and they nail it. And I mean, I'd
were
never
fantastic.
heard that live before. It was just the most amazing experience, deeply inspirational, and I remember thinking at the time, Ard Matthews is a great songwriter. That was always in my head. Yes, he's a great singer, but this guy's a great songwriter.
But you know what? There was something special about them. I think that a lot of the big bands have, where you have a couple musicians in the band who are not just specific to their instrument; they're multi-instrumentalists. They're also
That's true.
composers.
Yeah.
Brent and Vernie,
Yeah, Vernie he's a great producer.
it's amazing. They all got amazing ears.
Actually,
you know?
right. I mean, Brent's incredibly
Yeah, yeah.
musical. Yeah.
So I think they came out. I mean, when I heard Just Another Day at the time, I was like, wow, that's such a piece of magic. It was such a simple song, you know. And then they went on to greater things. Now, What He Means, this became, I think, it's become an iconic song
Yeah.
because it speaks to, I think, a lot of South Africans, but not just South Africans, Africans, and if in a global context, anybody, right?
Yeah.
In terms of lyrically.
It's a universal song. It's very hard for me not to get chills when I hear the song. Just thinking about it, I always think every now and then I hear a song where I'm like, I wish I wrote that song.
This is one of them.
This is one of the. I'm not per se a religious person, but when I hear stuff like this, I'm like, how how did he come up with this?
Yeah.
But it's all perfect. Everything, it's like the universe just aligned perfectly, or the spirit of somebody or God or whoever it is
It's
just
inspired.
gave. It's the most. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. From the lyrics to the melody to the phrasing, the band sounds perfect. Everything in the song absolutely represents what the song is about, and that doesn't often happen in the history of music.
Yeah, that's correct.
I
Yeah.
personally feel like it's one of the greatest songs of all time.
Yeah, and it should have been heard by millions of people around the world as opposed to
I
just
agree.
us.
I agree.
Well, that's RJ Benjamin and his second track. It's another treat for you. It's Just Ginger with a track called What He Means.
Love, more tolerance, faith, hope, trust in the same name of God. Peace, love, more tolerance, faith, hope, trust in the same God in whose name we die for. Take an innocent life for. That's not what he means. And it doesn't matter what book you read.
And that was Just Ginger with What He Means, RJ Benjamin's second choice on the SA Music Box interview. And he's really indulging us with his perspective, a very unique perspective in music and a very personal perspective. Thank you for that, RJ.
Anytime.
Now, we were talking a lot about SA music and just picking up off the Just Ginger discussion. SA music currently, in my view, is in a very good space from a sheer quality perspective in terms of what's been generated, level of production, composition.
Yeah.
Who are the artists in South Africa that you feel are the A-list right now? Not in terms of sales, to be very specific, but in terms of quality.
Sure. That's a difficult one.
See, Sean, I always have one difficult question. This is it.
Okay. Look, I'll probably. There's one artist in this country who's not blown up as much as Amanda Black, for example.
Yeah,
and I also worked with her on a reality show. So I was working on The Voice South Africa season 1,
Right.
and she landed up getting into Lyra's group,
Right.
Lyra's team, and she, her name's Zoe Modiga.
Yeah.
And I had heard that she was studying at UCT, and she was an incredible vocalist.
You did a song recently with her and MT.
That's correct, called All Tied Up.
That's it.
And Zoe, I think I had met her at a music conference the year before, and I remember she was performing on stage, and she already had my attention. So it was when I saw her on The Voice, I was really excited because I was like, I really hope I get to work with her. You don't know who you're necessarily going to work with.
Yeah, sure.
I suppose to some degree we're ghost coaches. So I'm not the coach, I'm not Lyra, but I work for Lyra.
Yeah, it's helping her shape her selection.
Correct.
Yeah.
So the off-camera work, the hard graft slash
We know that. The hard
hashtag
work.
real work. You know what?
That's where it all goes down.
Yeah, exactly. And I was so glad I got to work with Zoe, and we literally worked until the day she left the show, and we spent a lot of time together. And the thing that kept on running through my head is, this is the most talented singer I've ever worked with.
Wow, I mean, that means a lot coming from you, RJ. You worked with so many people. So
I have, and I genuinely feel that way. I still feel this way to this day. Now, she decided, when she finished the show, she was offered a record deal with Universal. But given the option to not take it, and she decided not to take it, and released her first album
independently, right?
It was quite a jazz album. She recorded it, I think, at UCT, or at least in Cape Town.
Okay.
And I think she got nominated for a SAMA. I think the album certainly grabbed the attention of the jazz community, but the greater South African sort of community almost don't know about her. I mean, I performed at the Stand Back Joy Jazz Festival this year. She was on the bill, and she is spellbindingly brilliant.
Yeah.
And they know it.
I'm assuming she chose jazz because that's her cadence and that's her natural
I think it is.
affinity.
I think in many ways the voice was her kind of seeing, could I do this commercial thing? I mean, she was having to sing songs like Diamonds by Rihanna.
Yeah,
You know, material like that. I think she even sang a Nirvana song, Smells Like Teen Spirit, at some point.
As long as she didn't do Anaconda.
She didn't do Anaconda. I don't think she would have jazzified that thing the hell up. But I feel like she's like our next Miriam Makeba. Look, I know jazz is her thing, but she should still be known. She is phenomenal. And she's not just a phenomenal singer. She's an engaging performer.
Yeah.
But the way I'll never be that. I will never be that. Interesting. She's doing a performance with Sam Thing Soweto, who's doing incredibly well.
All right. Yeah.
Now, no disrespect to Sam, but I think Zoe's probably a better singer and and certainly a better performer than he is. And it's interesting because the audience will obviously know Sam more than her. And I always wonder,
he's going to give an access point to a more popular audience.
I hope so. Yeah. I really do, because I feel like she deserves it. If I'm to look at all of the singers that I've worked with on reality shows, I'd say the two most talented is as well-rounded musicians is Amanda Black and Zoe Modiga. Now, I know Amanda's phenomenal and succeeding deeply well, and it's my biggest wish that Zoe eventually reaches those levels. She deserves it.
Fantastic. Now, RJ, the industry we work in, music particularly, is complicated. There's good things about the industry and there's bad things about the industry. But as an artist, coming specifically from an artist perspective, you've been doing this for the better part of 16 or 17 years now. What would or could you change in the industry to make artists and music more successful? What do you think can make our artists more successful here?
I think the thing that most art look, it might be a worldwide problem. I don't really care about the world. I care about South Africa, and I care about
so do I.
And I think the thing I often find missing for artists, and I possibly suffered the same thing myself, is we just want to make music and we just want to make good music. And we forego all of the other stuff. And then you have raw talent who didn't study, didn't go through all the training, who decide to hone their business skills, understand the legal aspects of music,
publishing and all that,
all of that, and land up absolutely succeeding without having to have gone to, play, study and play the instrument for 5 hours a day and all those kind of things. And there's no disrespect to that, because I think a lot of degree courses are now incorporating a lot of business into their studies. Even there, as an artist, I remember David Alexander was our music business lecturer. He runs Sheer Publishing, and I just, like, as soon as I got into the classroom, I was not listening to David. I was listening to whatever song I was making up in my head. And I wish I listened to him. I mean, I made some big mistakes early on in my career. I've learned from it now. What I try and do to the best of my ability is transfer the skills. I mean, there's just lots of skills, like I know there are tons of artists probably listening now who are releasing their music on TuneCore, DistroKid, CD Baby. Those are generally the avenues that you think you should release through.
The easy way out.
It's easy
to get it out there.
You can sit at home. You can just sit at home and do it. But there are other guys who are playing the game seriously, and they're going, okay, so if I'm going to release independently, how do I compete with a label? Well, here's the thing that a label does that you're not doing. They have departments, so they have a PR and marketing department.
Correct.
Do you? And if you don't, what are you doing? And what do you? Because I think independent artists still feel like they want to compete with. If there's a guy who sounds like Vusi Nova, he wants to compete with him, whether he's releasing on DistroKid or not. But then you're having to compete with a guy who's signed to a label, who has a marketing and PR department,
who's got strong backing behind him,
who have a department who deals strictly with plugging to radio and making sure that the right stations are playing the songs, who have a department who communicate directly with Spotify and Apple Music and all these companies and make sure that there are banners as soon as they get released.
There's visibility on digital.
Correct. That as soon as you open that thing and you listen to the new music playlist, Vusi Nova's there. You should be there. And I think as independent artists, there's a lot who are just going, but this is easy. I'll just put it on DistroKid and then I'll put some stuff on social media and bam, I'm competing with Vusi Nova.
Yeah, it's not as easy as that.
It's just, I suppose my thing is this. I urge local artists to just think a little deeper about this and think about, if you're trying to compete with labels. What are labels doing? Because that's what you need to do.
Do you think that maybe one of the potential solutions is it's not just about good artists, but also having good artist management? When I say good, I mean trusted, because that's the big issue in with music, right?
Yeah.
It's having good, trusted artist management who can play the business game and genuinely have the best interest of the artist at heart.
I mean, I think that's what might have tainted the growth of South African artists in terms of understanding the business further. There are so many stories of mismanagement.
There's too many. I mean, it's like a 90% hit rate on that there.
I mean, look, I've had my fair share of it
I know
myself.
that.
And I've got my own trust issues around management.
But I'm sure that in itself also would force you to learn other aspects of the business, saying, well, I'm not going down that route again. I better know it myself, right?
I think so. I mean, I still think good management is a necessary part of the business. There are certain things that are just really hard to do yourself. And I won't lie, the managers, the people who have managed me, I do not think I would have gotten where I got to without them.
Yeah.
Benji Moody, the great Benji Moody.
Yeah.
I think you had him on the show.
Benji was the last SA Music Box episode.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Now Benji said something very that I've never forgotten.
Yeah.
We were sitting on a flight back from Cape Town together many years ago, and he said to me, I said to him, what is like the main thing that an artist needs from a manager?
Yeah.
And he said to me, what an artist needs is a hero, a champion, someone who's going to champion them.
That's correct.
And it's really hard to break through without that. It's that person who's...
Listen, I would say it's near impossible, right? Because as an artist and somebody who doesn't, I do it as a hobby. It's not a career for me.
Yeah.
But to be able to plug your own music, it sounds ridiculous. So you need somebody to be your champion.
Yeah.
Somebody to say, you should listen to this.
Absolutely.
You know?
Where are you going to find that guy?
Yeah.
Look, I got very lucky. A guy named Kaz Abrams.
Yeah.
Who you
I do remember Kaz.
You must remember.
Yeah.
Remember Kaz. He used to be a Channel O presenter.
TV Kaz, yes, that's it.
I
Yeah.
think he had a show called Ziwa Mo or something like that.
I remember Kaz.
He used to have the little beard.
Yeah, that's it.
He's still around. Kaz was my champion.
Oh, fantastic.
If it was not for Kaz, I would not be sitting and talking to you right now. We probably never would have met.
Wow, that's amazing.
So I have so much to thank him for. But then again, how do you find that person? Look, there's definitely an element of luck.
Absolutely.
You just got to be ready for it when it comes.
Now, your third and final choice, RJ, in the final song in your music box is Majosi, When Will You Be Mine?
Oh, man. This song had absolutely no significance to me before my child was born.
Yeah.
And now it does. So why? Just before, so my wife was pregnant, our baby was born in June. And just before that, Majosi came to perform on The Voice SA. And I was sitting listening to his sound check, and he was singing When Will You Be Mine?
Right.
And I was like, it's actually a really cool song. I mean, I had listened to it a lot when it came out.
Yeah.
But I never paid that much attention to it.
So lyrically and content-wise.
Yeah, maybe I was busy at the time, maybe I wasn't thinking about it, but I remember sitting and listening and going, this is a really good song. There's a beautifully crafted melody. These are really nice lyrics. I remember him performing it on the night and thinking the same thing. There's something beautiful about the song. It's simple in terms of its chord progression, melody and all that, but that's why it works. It's so beautiful. Sometimes the most beautiful songs are there's complexity and simplicity.
Yeah.
And this definitely was one of those songs. And okay, so my wife was rushed into to go for an emergency Caesar.
Right.
And I'm sitting in the waiting room waiting. And as happens with a lot of artists, songs started to play in my head. The first song that played in my head was Love Is On Its Way by Gangs of Ballet.
Right.
Love is on its way.
I like that what's playing in your head is like all like local stuff.
I know. It's I love Gangs of Ballet. And I suppose Love It's On Its Way came into my head because that's what I envisioned my child being, in many ways the embodiment of love. And then the next track that sort of my head clicked over to was When Will You Be Mine? And the chorus lyrics just kept on repeating and repeating and repeating and repeating.
So it's also a highly emotive moment. So you link those two things together.
I mean, sorry, I've got these lyrics on my phone, but I've been waiting for you all my life. You've been running through my dreams at night. I've been searching for the longest time. Tell me, darling, when will you be mine? And those lyrics are beautiful, man. And they directly... I hadn't met my child yet, but tell me, darling, when will you be mine? I suppose I was going like, when is it going to happen? When is this child coming?
No, listen, I mean, that track has got an incredible melody.
It's so beautiful, man. And the next day, I actually sent him a message just to say, hey, man, I just wanted you to know, because I didn't speak to him.
Oh, that's the most flattering thing you could ever say to an artist, isn't it?
I think so. I felt I had to do it. I felt this guy... he's made a mark in my life because I can. It was his song, was my child's song. It's basically they're now together, whether he likes it or not, you know. And
for the rest of your life.
Exactly. And look, I sent him a message. I never spoke to him after the Idols performance, and I just said, "Listen, man, I just wanted to say, I love your song. I think you're a great artist." And I explained to him the story, and he was like, "Wow, man!" And then he told me this other little tidbit of fascinating information that. One of the guys from Gangs of Ballet, I forget his name now, wrote "When Will You Be Mine" with my Josie.
Are you kidding?
How is it that I thought of those two songs together?
It was written in the stars,
it's fascinating, man.
It was written in the stars.
Oh yeah.
RJ, thank you for that story. That's I love that story.
It's a pleasure, man.
So this is RJ Benjamin's third and final choice on the SA Music Box. It's my Josie with the beautiful and evergreen "When Will You Be Mine."
I've been waiting for you all my life. You've been running through my dreams at night. I've been searching for the longest time. Tell me, darling, when will you be mine?
Welcome back to the SA Music Box with RJ Benjamin in studio with us. RJ, 3 fantastic choices, and thank you for sharing those stories with us.
No, only a pleasure, man.
Music is very emotional. It's got me emotional. I'm sure it's for many of our listeners out there can maybe relate to that there. Now, before we go, where can people follow you and find you?
Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, it's all RJ Benjamin. So if it's Twitter and Instagram, at RJ Benjamin.
Right.
Facebook, just type in RJ Benjamin.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful choice. Thank you for sharing that with us. You can follow RJ Benjamin on Facebook or on Instagram. And these were his choices for the SA Music Box. Thank you, RJ.
Anytime.
Cheers.
Hot 91.9.
Playing the best old school and R&B.